Thank you, sir. Mr. Crenshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to you all. I think we all look forward to working together to not only meet some of these tough budget choices, but also to understand what kind of impact it's going to have on our military today as well as our national security in the future. And so I wanted to start by just bringing up something I've been working on for some time now, and that has to do with the strategic dispersal of our nuclear aircraft carriers. Members of the subcommittee have heard me talk about this from time to time, but as you all know, when we went to an all-nuclear fleet of carriers, then we went on the East Coast from having 2 home ports to just 1 home port. And so the Navy did a study for 2.5 years, concluded that it was a strategic imperative to have 2 home ports on the East Coast because we have 3 on the West Coast. And I think, Mr. Secretary, it was your predecessor who said it's never been acceptable to have a single home port on the West Coast, and it certainly shouldn't be acceptable to have only 1 on the East Coast. So the Navy began the process to create a second home port for a nuclear carrier, but this budget doesn't have any money. It kind of has 0 money to continue that strategic imperative. So I think that's really more of a question for Secretary Mabus and CNO, but I wanted to bring it up because I think it's symbolic of a decision that I think all of us have certainly in the back of our mind, because when we look at the budget, we can't help but ask the question, are we making these decisions based on strategic needs, or are we trying to find the easiest way to save some money? And that's very important. You heard Chairman Young say, I don't think we ever ought to make decisions about national security based on politics or budgetary constraints. So I wanted to make that point, but before I ask a question about where we spend money or where we don't spend money, this is something I'd like to ask you, Mr. Secretary. Just when I read about the new strategic guidance, you know, there are several fancy words about aggression and things. When I look back at the QDR we did a couple of years ago, it kind of reinforces the simple statement that we ought to be able, among other things, we ought to be able to fight, I think it said 2 wars at one time, or defeat 2 nations or non-state aggressors at one time. And when you talk about strategic guidance, it's different. You defeat a major adversary, you stop aggression. And my kids always used to ask me when I would say something that I didn't quite think they'd understand, they say, Dad, would you unwrap that for me? So just talk about, you know, how your department came to this new strategic guidance, what that means in real world terms about how we would deal with some of the situations we're dealing now. And then maybe most importantly, are you convinced that everything in this budget, there's some things you got to have in terms of assets, in terms of platforms, in terms of people, and does this budget really make sure that we have those assets as we go forward?
I'm going to ask Marty Dempsey to comment on that as well, because you know, obviously we relied a great deal on our military chiefs to give us guidance with regards to this key issue. From the very beginning, when we sat down, particularly with the combatant commanders, we said, you know, we've got to have the capability of confronting more than one adversary at a time. And in many ways, that's always been the key. I mean, I know there's been talk about 2 land wars. The fact is, look, we had 2 land wars in these last 10 years, but in order to do that, we had to mobilize. We really didn't have the capacity, even though it may have been in the QDB and all the other things that they have, you know, for planning. The reality was, when it came to it, we had to mobilize additional forces in order to be able to do that. And so our approach was, okay, let's assume we have to confront more than one adversary at a time. I mean, the more likely scenario is you're fighting a land war in Korea, and as I said, the Straits of Hormuz suddenly get closed by Iran, tries to take advantage of it. Do we have the capability to be able to address that kind of crisis and make sure we've got sufficient force able to deal with it, to deter it, and to make sure that we can defeat that adversary as well? The military said, we have got the capability to do that. We've got the air power, we've got the naval power, located in the right places to be able to confront that situation? Can we address other challenges that might come up at the same time? And the key there is to recognize that we're in the 21st century, and we're going to be dealing with a kind of asymmetric kind of attacks that are going to be a lot different than what we've seen in the past. Our ability to use cyber, our ability to use space, our ability to use precision weaponry, all of that, those kind of new capabilities is going to give us the kind of advantage we need to have. In many ways, what I've said is we need to leap ahead of our adversaries. For example, China's developing, obviously, and adding more to their military. We have to have the capability not just simply to match them, we need to have the capability to leap ahead, to be able to have the kind of technology we need in order to deal with that. And that's where we've put our investments.
The only thing I'd add, Mr. Secretary and Congressman, is that, when we unwrapped the QDR and looked at some of the accounting rules that accrue from strategy. So we say we have to fight two conflicts, and we kind of name them, and then we look at accounting rules. There was a tyranny of language, actually, which your children would probably appreciate. And the tyranny of language was that, we say we got to be able to do something in Korea. It's going to last X number of days. We need this much ammunition. Therefore, you need this many trucks to. And the next thing you know, you've got this incredibly large, cumbersome structure that is not as agile as what the Secretary has challenged us to find or to be. And so as we have unwrapped the two-war strategy, what I'll tell you is it was never all that it said it was, to be honest. And I was part of it, so, I mean, it's a self-indictment. But the other thing about it was, in this century, it's actually quite imprecise, because the other insight that I shared earlier about this strategic seminar series that I'm running with the chiefs and combatant commanders is that if we're doing anything or two places, there's going to be a third, and that's the homeland. And we have to account for the structure required to stay here in the homeland for consequence management, relief, protection, and all of that. So it never was a two-war strategy. It really was always a three. And so what we've actually tried to do is now talk to ourselves about how to take the resources available, change the way we apply them to achieve the same ends. And we know we can do that, and we're continuing to work toward that end.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.